Oh, goody.
All right, what's going on, everybody? Zombies here again, and today we're back with another Marvel Snap video. So today we're taking a look at the final card release of the month, Mobius and Mobius. Probably the most hyped up release of the month outside of Loki himself. And hopefully, well, a lot of people are thinking this card is going to rein in the Loki metas and maybe save the meta. I'm not quite as optimistic about it. I think this card is going to end up just going in the Loki deck and is going to encourage a bunch of rogue shenanigans to steal the Mobius so you get the Mobius, but we'll see. We're going to take a look at some decks for it, but what does Mobius do? He is a 2-cost, 3-power that reads ongoing. Your costs can't be increased, your opponent's cost cannot be reduced. So how does this work if there are 2 Mobiuses in play? Well, basically all cards are going to stay at their default cost. No reduction, no increases, just fair Marvel Snap at the default cost. Looking at the Spotlight caches for this week, we have High Evolutionary and Kang making reappearances, new variant for Kang, and a repeat on High Evolutionary. This is kind of stupid to me and a bit of a joke, especially because in the past they said, well, the reason cards aren't coming back in the Spotlight system is because we don't have variants for them, and here we have High Evolutionary coming back with a repeat variant in the Spotlight cache system. And I think this is really showing off how they did not have this system fully prepared for or thought out. It was rushed out the door, and now we're starting to see the consequences of that. And of course, there's going to be the Mobius variant as well. Not really a fan of this one personally. I think it looks a bit too much like the base art, but obviously everyone has different preferences when it comes to art. So in terms of buying or opening this card, I think this card is a must-have given the fact that it's going to drastically change the meta, or at least that's what people are hoping, given just how impactful it is on shutting down cost reduction. Here we can see a little graphic made by Drewberry showing just all the cards and locations that get shut down by Mobius, and if you look at this list, a lot of these are very meta-relevant cards, such as Wave, Miles Morales, Stature, Loki and Quinjet, and even cards that may not be a huge part of the meta but are core parts of building very specific decks, like Mr. Negative, Beast for Bounce, Sarah for all the Sarah decks, Death for Destroy, just a ton of cards here that get absolutely shut down just by this one card. So I will not be surprised if this card ends up getting adjusted at some point in the future, because I think the fact that it is such an effective tool to just shut out a lot of other decks is maybe a bit too good for the 2-cost, 3-power stat line, but we'll see how that goes in the future. Ultimately, should you be opening for this card, probably wouldn't open this week unless you do not have High Evolutionary. If you're missing High Evolutionary, then I think this is a pretty value week. Kang, kind of useless. Maybe he gets reworked in the future, who knows? But I think Mobius is a big one to go after. You should buy it with tokens if you can, unless you don't have High Evo, in which case it's probably a pretty good Spotlight week. Let's take a look at our day 1 decks for Mobius. So first up, we have Move Wave. This is a deck that I think is fairly good. The issue it's been having is that it has a tough time into Loki a lot of the time, and hopefully Mobius is going to shore up that weakness by reducing one of the key parts of what makes Loki strong in cost reduction. This deck is always appreciated good statted 2-drops, and Mobius is a fine addition there, while also just shutting off a ton of powerful cost reduction effects and preventing our stuff from costing more. This also has really good synergy with Wave, because if we're able to use Mobius in combination with Wave, we're able to cheat out a big thing for lesser cost while still weaving in one of our cheaper cards to go with it. And another neat aspect about this is it also enables us to do some early ramp shenanigans where we can curve out with Mobius into Wave, then we can play a big impactful card like Dr. Doom or Alioth, while the opponent is only able to play their cards that cost 4 or less, and only one of them at that, because their 6 costs will not be able to be reduced to 4. So I think this deck was already pretty powerful, and really Loki was the only thing hammering it down. So if Mobius can be a fairly decent counter to Loki, or just something that reduces his overall presence in the metagame, I think there's a good chance of this tempo move deck returning to prominence. It has changed a little bit since the old versions with the addition of Snowguard and Alioth. I think Alioth is a bit of an optional include here. I think you can also just put another impactful 6-drop in that slot. For now, I think Alioth is a really, really good one. However, if you don't have it, maybe something like Magneto or just another big threat in that spot would be a good inclusion. And then Snowguard gives us not only a nice thing to play on one, but also a bit of location control without having to commit a whole turn to doing that with things like Legion, given that controlling locations isn't really a very present effect in the game, and it also just gives us some more stuff to fill out our early or mid-game curve. Then we have Ramp. So Ramp has been a very successful deck recently. I've played a lot of this version, just swapping out Mobius for Jeff, and I think Mobius is going to be a great include here for the reasons that were previously mentioned with Wave. Card's just very, very strong with Wave. It's also just a decently statted 2-drop that fits nicely into our curve. And Electro-based decks are probably going to benefit from the rise in Mobius, as they don't really care about the restriction he provides because, well, we aren't cheating costs, we're cheating energy. We just have more energy, so we can cheat things out faster. So I think this kind of deck is definitely going to benefit a lot. It is a Galactus backup plan kind of deck where you can do the Galactus into Alioth stuff, or Galactus on 4, Alioth on 5, Odin on 6, just a complete and total lockout. And I think Mobius is going to enable that a little bit more often, where you can go Mobius into Wave. So that way you can play your Galactus and your opponent can't play a big thing to try and stop it from going off. But this isn't a all-in Galactus deck. This is a deck that can win just fine without him, where we use our other powerful cards that we ramp out. Iron Lad has a lot of good hits in this deck. Professor X on 4 can totally just guarantee us a lane, which we can then follow up with Alioth or Leader to help close out another one. Dino, just a good thing to ramp out into since we're not playing a ton of cards given the high cost of our cards. Odin to rebuy some of our powerful effects like Wave, Leader, or Alioth, and America Chavez just for a bit of consistency in getting those early cards early when we need them. And then we have Nebula as our main early game 1-drop because she can get a lot of stats, or at the very least kind of restrict the way the opponent has to play their cards throughout the game. Then we have Iron Patriot. So this is another deck that has been doing kind of alright recently, but I think is going to be a lot better with the addition of Mobius, mainly because it doesn't really get affected by opposing Mobiuses a whole ton. So this deck is one that isn't really impacted by Mobius a whole ton, but it can easily run the card to shut down other decks that are, while still sticking to its general game plan here. Just trying to get the combo of Forge into Brood into Absorbing Man. Copying those Brood links is really big. You can also do that with Iron Lad. We have a bunch of good hits for the Iron Lad with things like Iron Man, Blue Marvel, Doctor Doom, Brood. Even Patriot's not that bad of a hit. Or Mr. Sinister, who's kind of our backup Brood plan. This deck has still been really good. I think it's kind of underplayed. Iron Man is a addition we're making here in the hope that there is less Loki around post Mobius, as Iron Man's really good when you get him off Lad, or just when you don't have to worry about your opponent copying it for less with Loki. And at the very least, Mobius will make sure that they have to pay full cost for those copied cards. And then if you're someone who enjoys playing Loki, I don't think the deck is actually going anywhere. It's just going to be slotting Mobius in for the mirror matches. Depending on how many people are running this card, it might even be correct to put Rogue in that slot, just to steal it so your opponent can't Mobius you, and you can Mobius them. But we'll see how quickly the meta devolves into Mobius mirror stuff. But yeah, not too much to say about this one. If you've played Ladder at all since this card came out, you've probably seen a very similar version of this deck. Some people find room for Legion. I think that's fine as well. You could cut one of the 2-drops here, like Mirage or Cable. I've personally liked the extra card generation, but it really comes down to personal preference. But Kitty definitely going to get a boost from this, because Kitty Pride Angela stuff was already really good in this deck, and now it's going to be even better because you don't have to worry about the potential of your opponent trying to lock out what you're playing on the final turn with Wave. And then the last deck we have here is probably a bit of a meme, but I think it'll be kind of funny to try, and that is a Loki Sarah deck. So the idea with this one is I wanted to play something with Rogue to steal the opposing Mobiuses. Rogue does that very effectively. She fits very well in Silver Surfer, and there's just a lot of decent cards at the 3-drop slot we can run in this deck. Sarah might be a liability with all the Mobius going around, but that's why we're running Rogue. We're running our own Mobius as well to negate any other cost increases that we might run into. And then why not have Loki? Because, well, if the Sarah plan is not working out for you, or the Surfer stuff just isn't lining up, just take their cards and do it better than they can. When we have Rogue to hopefully shut down opposing Mobiuses, Loki should still be very effective, and we're very easily able to run 2 cards that generate cards here in Snowguard and Agent Coulson, so that way we still have cards generated to trade in with our Loki. There we have it. That is going to wrap it up for our day 1 Mobius decks. So what do you think about this card? Are you excited for this one? Do you think it's going to have a big impact on the meta? And I think the bigger question is, do you think effects like this are good for the game? Looking at the image here again, seeing all the stuff it limits, I think this card is going to be a real fun killer overall. And I think it's going to quickly divulge into an issue of either having the Mobius or not having it, or just making things so polarized in terms of matchups, you're really playing the matchups more than actually playing the game. And that's not something I ever really like to see. Hope I'm wrong about that, but I guess only time will tell. But yeah, that's going to wrap it up for this video. If you enjoyed it, remember to like and subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.